And welcome into another episode of Denmark and Marsh. I am Dylan Denmark. The man that will be beside me momentarily will be Graham Marsh. You can get us on Twitter at 1010XL Denmark and at 1010XL Graham. I'm the producer for Jaguars Today and Hacker After Dark. Graham does sales and videos for the station. We had a plan to talk about Calvin Ridley and Gator Basketball, and then all of a sudden, Trent Baalke said he's not done yet with free agency and pulls a fast one against Arik Armstead, the interior defensive lineman from the San Francisco 49ers. He pretty much was a cap casualty. 2 years ago, Arik Armstead missed half the season, and last year he played in 12 of the games. I think San Fran, if you count the playoff games, was 17. So he played 19, 20 games. He played in 12 of them last year. Had Arik Armstead been brought back to the San Francisco 49ers, it would have been a cap hit of $28 million, and the Niners are in the middle of a Super Bowl run, so they felt like they wanted to save some money and go elsewhere. So now Jacksonville has him. So the questions that were looming on the pass rush and the defensive line that we kept talking about, the interior D-line, you got to address it. It finally happened, and his deal is worth 3 years, $51 million, and this happened as of an hour ago, reports from Jordan Schultz and Adam Schefter.
I think we ain't done yet. I think we ain't done yet.
I think he said, I said we ain't done yet.
I said
we ain't done yet.
We ain't done yet. No, it was a great move. You were on this like 2 weeks ago saying that if there's a position they're going to spend really big money on, it's going to be defensive line. Arik Armstead immediately moves to the top of the list as best player they signed, right?
Yeah.
He's better than Gabe Davis. He's better than...
Now, if he's healthy, that's the question.
Yeah, but I'm just talking pound for pound.
Yeah,
on any given Sunday, if you're assuming the whole roster's healthy and they're all playing, he's immediately the best signee you've had. He's the best football player you've added to this roster in the offseason so far.
Without question.
Answer this question for me. It's a true or false.
Okay.
True or false? Arik Armstead in the 2024 football season helps the Jaguars win games more than Calvin Ridley would have.
That's true.
I agree.
It's not even close.
I agree as well. For a way cheaper contract, by the way. $40 million cheaper.
Yeah, all the details haven't came out from Armstead, but all we know is 3 years, $51 million. That came out like literally 20 minutes ago.
And if it's 3 years, $51 million, because the number that always gets reported is leaked to... It's leaked to the Ian Rappaports and Adam Schefter's of the world by the agent, so it's always as big of a number as they can possibly cook up. So it's $51 million in total. I would imagine the guarantees will probably be like 40 something, somewhere like high 30s, low 40s guaranteed, something like that.
I was thinking 30s.
Something like that. Maybe 36, 37 guaranteed, something around there. For that type of player, for that type of interior pass rush, for that type of a game wrecker on the inside, hell yeah, I'll take that. He's a Trent Baalke draft pick, by the way.
Yeah, he was one of the last Trent Baalke draft picks from the 2015 class, and he was one of the last guys that was one of the oldest guys from that played for San Francisco.
Yeah,
because I mean everybody's pretty new there, so this was a big deal, and also, he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year like multiple times. And everybody talks about from San Francisco. I listen to John Middlecoff. He does a 3 and Out podcast on the Volume. He's from the Bay Area, so he knows San Francisco very well. And he spoke on how much he meant to like that team. And like they apparently like there was a video that came out toward the end of the year where they were thanking Armstead for what he's done for the Walter Payton Player of the Year, and a lot of them were crying. So he means a lot to them. And again, this was just one of those where he got let go by the Niners because they didn't think he was worth the money that he was going to get because he's been hurt the last 2 years.
May I say a controversial thing?
Sure. Let me sit down. All right, I'm sitting down.
Jaguar fans, don't kill me when you hear this. I believe Trent Baalke is a very good GM in the respect of I think he is a good, contract manager for the most part, and I think he has mostly had solid hits in free agency. There's been some duds. Foley Fatukasi was a dud that comes to mind, but for the most part, the free agents that he has brought to Jacksonville in his time here have been good contributors to the team. Even guys that have gotten cut, like Rayshawn Jenkins, he was still a solid piece of this team while he was here.
That was valuable.
Right. Where he falls short as a GM and where the issues arise have been more on the draft side of things. He's had way too many misses in the draft. That's the main issue with Trent Baalke as a general manager, and this translates back to his time in San Francisco. He did the same thing. That said, I have no problem with Baalke just having the self-awareness that, hey, we've had some draft misses. He'll never say this publicly, but hey, we've had some draft misses. Let's fill these holes with free agents, knowing that we can manipulate the cap in a good way and not just nuke our salary cap options year in, year out, and fill as many holes as possible that way so that when the draft comes, we only need 1 or 2 holes filled that we can invest high picks in because we like the way we think we're going to like the way the board falls at that position. And other than that, let's just go get proven players. And let's use our strengths as a staff, which is, again, managing the cap well, restructuring deals, keeping things at bay and not being too hard on the Jaguars cap. And let's just use the draft to fill in pieces, almost the reverse way that most teams do it. I'm fine with it. If that's going to be the way they're going to attack it.
Especially with them being right now, with them being in win-now mode. They know this is the last year for Trevor Lawrence's rookie contract. They know that for them to have the best chance at a playoff run to make a Super Bowl is getting whatever you can and doing it right now. You're putting all your chips at the front of the table. You're playing poker and you're going all in. And you get the sense that from listening to all the press conferences, is 2 years ago, they have a good run. They lose to Kansas City. Last year, they think it was the injuries. If it weren't for the injuries, they think that they would have been a lot better. Obviously, who knows? We'll never know. So now you've addressed interior D-line. You've gotten a corner. You have signed a wide receiver, even though you let Calvin Ridley go. Who else am I? Who's another free agent that they've got? They got a good special teams guy.
Yeah.
So
you got another safety.
Yeah. So there's no big hole.
You got a center in Mitch Morse.
Yes, that was the one. There's no big hole that they must address in the draft. It's not like the number one pick. Okay, we have to get this one position, and if not, it's going to be a failure.
Disagree. I still think corner is.
Oh, I agree. You have to address corner, but it's
Ronald Darby,
you have 2 guys that that can play. It's not like you have Tyson Campbell and you have no idea who's playing the other corner.
Are you okay with if week 1 comes around and Ronald Darby is your starter opposite Tyson Campbell?
I'm not confident.
I don't love it. I still think that I get the sense that Ronald Darby is their nickel, and they're still gonna draft a Quinyon Mitchell or a Terrion Arnold.
Yeah, we had John Oster, Jaguar senior writer, on Jaguars Today yesterday. He's been on both days. He was on yesterday, and he said he gets the sense that Ryan Nielsen runs a 4-3, and it's going to be more of them running a 4-2 with basically 5 DBs on the field. So that's why they went out and got the Green Bay Packers safety. You have Andre Cisco. You have Antonio Johnson. You have Darby, Tyson Campbell, and then obviously it looks like they're probably going to go corner in that first round. So you're going to have that collection of guys. From what he says, he doesn't know, he's not confident, but he said if he had to guess, that's what he thinks is going to happen.
I would say R.I.P. Trey Herndon. Be shocked if he's back.
Yeah,
I don't think Trey Herndon's going to be back. It's going to be really interesting to see where Antonio Johnson fits into this now. Now with the addition of Darby and Savage, you would think that between Darby, Savage, and Johnson, you would believe that that's 3 players competing for 2 spots.
Yes.
Do you think I'm correct in that?
Yeah, I think Savage.
Darby won't play safety, but what I think is Antonio Johnson at this point, I've heard nothing that suggests that he can't play either safety and replace Rayshon Jenkins' spot or nickel corner. He played nickel corner last year. Darnell Savage, there have been reports that he's seen as potentially that nickel spot. There have also been reports that he's going to be your safety, opposite Andre Sisco. And then Ronald Darby is a corner no matter what. Either outside or inside.
I think Savage is definitely going to play just because of the money that they gave him. Tyson Campbell's your guy. And then from there, it's a bunch of question marks. I think Andre Sisco gets the nod over
I think Sisco
Johnson.
I think Sisco's in that first category.
Yeah.
For sure. Starters.
But other than that, it's a lot of question marks at the moment.
Yeah. What I do like is there is depth there now because you have all these guys you added. We both think that they're probably going to draft. They're probably still going to draft a corner in the first round. So you add that guy. And you also add on to the fact that they have Greg Jr. still and they have Monteric Brown still. Greg Jr. they really liked before he hurt his hamstring last year. Right, we're pretty much right before the season started, but he had a really good preseason, really good camp. We'll see again with him where he stands. And then Monteric Brown played well when Tyson Campbell couldn't go because of his hamstring. Monteric Brown you get the sense that if the guy who's supposed to be your stud corner and Tyson Campbell can't play because of a hamstring and you got to put a 7th round pick in there, that typically is a recipe for, okay, the other team's going to pick on him. And he never got picked on. He really held his own. I never got the sense one time that he was a liability out there. So now what I do like is, although we're not positive who's gonna end up starting, there's a lot of guys I feel good about being on the field. There's very few guys anymore where I'm like, oh God. Because you know this as well as I do. Probably the worst position, probably the worst group on the entire field to have a liability at is DB.
Yeah, because you just get picked on the whole drive.
It sucks to have a liability at D-line. It sucks to have a liability at line. It sucks to have a liability anywhere. Corner is probably the worst position to have a guy that's just barbecue chicken out there. And safety's probably second. Because you just, if they can't play, you're giving up chunk play after chunk play after chunk play, and you're never going to win it.
Yeah, and if you play man, they beat you deep, and then if you play zone, you have to give a cushion. And so they nickel and dime you all the way down the field, essentially.
Right.
So with the free agents, obviously they're not done yet. It wouldn't still surprise me if Balky goes out and gets a receiver like a Curtis Samuel or Mike Williams.
Brandon Ayuk, question mark.
Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, Odell's a free agent. There's still guys that are out there. Prosser threw out, this was obviously before the Armstead signing. He thought that in the beginning of the week before the Ridley signing or before the Ridley departure that a lot of the moves were lateral. Obviously not Mitch Morse, but the Savage just replaces Rayshon Jenkins and so on and so forth. And they
Darby and Darius Williams.
Right. And they were basically cap casualties, and you just replaced them with guys that are just cheaper.
And they're not all even necessarily all that much cheaper either. It's just when you get rid of cap casualties and bring in somebody else and you backload their contracts, you just kick the can down the road a few years.
Yeah.
And then what happens in a couple of years, you just cut them and rinse and repeat the cycle.
So here's the question. So as of right now, with the free agents that they have and not knowing who they're going to get in the draft yet, do you think that Jacksonville is better now than they were in December?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not even a hesitation.
Yes. I think they're almost without question better. Because, first of all, I think the Mitch Morse upgrade over Luke Fortner is, by itself, substantially helps this offense. I got the sense, again, I'm not a big offensive line guy. It's not like I sit there and study the offensive line tape, but from people that do study it more, I got the sense by the end of last year that basically anything you tried to do between the guards was just not going to happen because the center was just going to get his ass beat every single play. Not every single play, but you know what I mean. that is such an upgrade that I think the offense gets substantially better just based off of that alone. And I think it should, in theory. This is probably drinking a little bit of Kool-Aid, but it's the offseason, so I'm going to do it. In theory, that should help Brandon Sheriff and Ezra Cleveland be better as well because they've got someone they can rely on better in the middle. So that's a huge upgrade to me. Sucks to lose Calvin Ridley, but I tend to believe that it doesn't leave as big of a hole as people believe it does. Just because what happens is we end up overrating these guys because he was the best wide receiver genuinely available in the open market. So we start to put him in this tier of player that he's not actually in. Gabe Davis being there, Kirk being back healthy, you assume Zay Jones is probably going to be back on this team again, and I would have to imagine they're going to draft a wide receiver somewhat early. Probably not first round. We think they're going to go corner, but second.
2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, because third round, I know they just gave their third round pick to the Falcons, but they still get a third round comp pick for Jawan Taylor from last year. So,
which is like a difference in like I think 14 or 15 picks.
Right.
I think whatever it was.
And this is one of the deepest wide receiver drafts ever. So you have to imagine they're going to draft a wide receiver at some point as well. And then defensively, I agree that a lot of these guys are kind of just the same. They're not necessarily huge upgrades over who these free agents replaced. But they just got Arik Armstead, who is a gigantic upgrade over Foley Fatukasi. Gigantic upgrade. This is the first guy since Calais that they've had in the middle that you feel like can genuinely rush the passer and genuinely cause an offense problems. From the middle, Trayvon stepped up last year. He started making some plays, and that really helped, and that obviously allowed Josh Allen to eat. And Josh Allen proved how good he really is. Imagine Josh Allen now with what you would imagine is going to be an even better Trayvon Walker and Arik Armstead in the middle.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's a scary-ass D-line now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Houston did, and D'Amico Ryan said he wants to build his D-line because he doesn't think that you can have a good defense without a good defensive line.
And he's right. You can't.
So Will Anderson had a good year, and now you add Daniil Hunter. And you have a couple other guys that you think are going to be capable of doing that, and Jacksonville's trying to do the same thing. That was why Seattle was good for all those years. Everybody wants to talk about the secondary and all that. They were able to get pressure on the quarterback so many times because the quarterback has less than 2 seconds to throw, which makes everybody else look better. I want to throw this out there before we get to Calvin Ridley. When it comes to NFL free agency, just off the top of your mind, tell me what teams have done good so far in NFL free agency.
What teams have done well in free
Yes.
agency, just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to
Washington.
say it. Yeah, Washington. I hate to say it, but I'll say the Titans.
Okay.
I think they've overpaid for some guys, but they have the money to do so. So I think they've made their roster better.
So the point I'm trying to make with this is NFL free agency, we do this every year. Anytime, and this isn't a one size fits all, but anytime like a team goes out and gets players, we think that he's the greatest person in the world. There's a reason he was available because of either money or health or whatever it may be. A lot of the teams that are making moves, like big moves, Washington, they had the most cap and they were one of the worst teams in the league. Tennessee wasn't very good last year.
And had a ton of cap.
And they had a ton of cap. Jacksonville doesn't really fit in this mold, but they had a cap and they made a lot of moves to get these players. They made a lot of cuts. The point that I see is like Kansas City isn't making a lot of big moves. Buffalo's not making a lot of big moves. Buffalo, San Francisco. So we have to understand, yes, free agency is part of it, but we overvalue free agency a little bit because we live such in the moment. And again, I'm not speaking just on Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is better because of free agency. But other teams, so let's go to Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley goes to Tennessee, and everybody's like, oh, Jacksonville on the side. That's a huge... I'm not of the belief that Calvin Ridley, would I like to see him play here? Sure. However, that dude is not worth 4 years, $92 million, $50 million guaranteed.
No, and we talked about this at the beginning of the pod. When you're the best available player at your position, you start to get treated like you're in the tier of best players at your position. And that's not always necessarily true. In fact, it's typically not true because, like you said, typically there's a reason they're available.
And you
Patrick
remember
Mahomes will never be available until he retires.
No.
Right?
Until he turns 40.
And why is that?
Because he's great.
Right, exactly.
And then Kansas City's never going to let him hit the mark.
Because the Chiefs would have to be clinically insane to allow him to be available in any type of way at any point in his career unless he's 45 years old.
Well, and there was a lot of people last week before free agency started, and everybody was like, well, Calvin Ridley's not better than Mike Evans. And Evans got basically 2 years, $41 million with some incentives. It's like, yes, that's true, but we all know, number one, we don't know what Mike Evans' value was on the market. We don't know if he just wanted to stay and just want to take a hometown discount. And Calvin Ridley was the only dude available. Michael Pittman signed a tag. He didn't test the market, nor did T. Higgins, nor did Mike Evans. So you have all these, like you said, none of these guys test the market, and he's the only one available. So he was going to get big money. It was like I said 2 weeks ago. I would have been fine paying him $18 million, which is apparently this is what Jaguars offered him. New England, I think they offered him 20, 22, and then Tennessee gave him the most money. And you can't fault him for that.
All the reports indicate that for the majority of this time frame since the legal tampering period opened on Monday was that New England was the main player outside of Jacksonville that was in the Calvin Ridley sweepstakes. They offered him a richer deal than what the Jaguars were offering, but he wanted to stay in Jacksonville. And he didn't like the deal enough to go up to New England, and he would have rather stayed in Jacksonville and taken a few less million per year. And that was what was going to happen. And at the final hour, the Titans came in and blew him away with even more than both offers. So that's why he's a Titan. If that weren't the case, he'd be a Jaguar. By the way, if the Titans didn't come in at the 11th hour and take him with that contract and blow him away and take him away from the Jags, I don't think Arik Armstead's here.
No.
And again, we said it at the beginning of this pod. Does Arik Armstead help the Jaguars in 2024? Assuming health, obviously. We know this.
If he plays 13, let's just go off the base. If he plays 13 games out of the 17.
And he's the guy that we've seen in San Francisco. That player is more valuable to the Jaguars based on what they need. And I think he's a better player at his position than Ridley is at his.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because you can't find really, really good D linemen on the open market and in the draft. There's probably very few that are going to be in the draft that are going to have an immediate impact in their rookie year.
There's far less than receivers.
Right. So receivers, it would not surprise me in the least if Ricky Pearsall, McConkey from Georgia, Malik Neighbors,
Xavier
Legette, Marvin Harrison. It would not surprise me in the slightest if any of those guys had a big impact on a team that wins.
Yeah.
You don't get that from D linemen, by and large. And like we've said, there's going to be 8-9 guys that go in the first 2 rounds. And so much of receiver is based on the quarterback and how the quarterback is able to develop the receiver. I think we get too much caught up in the receiver, and it's hard to judge like a lot of guys in college because, you know, this is just one guy like Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. He was schemed so well in Tennessee where he ran wide open. I don't know what a lot of guys, you know, everybody's propping up everybody in the draft that they're going to do, and I think they will just because of the rules and how the game has changed. But I'm perfectly fine with finding someone later in the draft in a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round and crossing your fingers that Balky can get a guy, even if he doesn't work. Because here's the thing. If you wait, let's just say the Jaguars get a guy in the 2nd round. They get a receiver. And there's 3 other receivers that are picked around the Jaguars, where it'd be 2 before and 1 or 2 later. It doesn't make his thought process wrong. It just means you picked the wrong guy. Now, it doesn't make it feel any better, but your process was right, but you can still get that guy in the 2nd round. And you don't get that with an interior offensive lineman or an interior defensive lineman.
No. And it really goes back to the first thing you said. There's less human beings on the planet that can play interior defensive line at an elite level or will ever be able to than wide receivers.
All right, so we just got news coming out less than 5 minutes ago. So one of the guys I mentioned, Curtis Samuel, Curtis Samuel from Washington, he's going to the Bills for 3 years, $24 million, worth up to $30 million, 15 guaranteed. So that was a guy I kind of targeted because he can play multiple positions. You know, Doug Pearson's all about versatility regardless of who it is. So you can scratch him off the watch board, I guess. So there's still Mike Williams, who from the Chargers has a injury history, but is very capable of being a really good dude, deep threat that can go get a jump ball at any time. And there's still others that are still out there to be available, but
just the age,
and the age too. But I mean, bulky.
The only way I would go for a Mike Williams deal is if you give it a while. And you let the draft come, you let OTAs come, and he's still not signed. And you know how this goes with those types of guys that are aging but have been expensive in the past but have been productive. Typically, with every passing day that they don't get signed in these kind of windows that people get signed, their asking price goes down and their leverage goes down. So if you could wait that process out, and let's say they don't get a receiver with an early pick that they really feel good about, then, you know, sometime before training camp, if you can take a flyer on him and he's pretty cheap at that point and not vet minimum, but not a lot of money, I tend to believe he's probably going to get picked up before that. So I'm not trying to pay him a ton of money or anything. Just if you could get a flyer on him later, I'd be fine. Odell Beckham Jr., I know he got cut this morning. I got no interest in OBJ.
I don't either. I don't want all that attention.
Well, for me, it's the injuries, man. He's had a ton, and Mike Williams has been injured too, but I don't think it's quite as much as OBJ, if I'm remembering correctly. And I just think Mike Williams has been a better player in the last 3-4 years than Odell Beckham.
Yeah, I think he had a season-ending injury last year, and I think he had another one a couple of years ago, like 2020, 2021. Guys like those, the guarantee's not as much, but I mean, if you're in charge, you kind of want those kind of contracts to be more incentive-based. If you play X amount of games, if you get X amount of stats, that you get that kind of money and the guarantee's not as much. I'm fine with those. But, you know, we'll see. It's only Thursday.
Dude, you
Free
could
agency
say
was just started yesterday, and we're just now getting it, you know, really started into all these officially, you know, signings.
You could say, so like exactly what you just said about like what a contract is worth in total. Dude, you could have said Gabe Davis's contract was worth $85 million in total. I don't care. I want to know the guarantees. And that's the Calvin Ridley number. That's crazy. Is not the $92 million. Because if he ever sees $92 million, that means he's balling the hell out. That means he's making Pro Bowl. He's on all pros. He's catching touchdown after touchdown, and the Titans would be glad to pay him that. What matters is the guarantee. We talked about this last week. What matters is the guarantee, because we need to know, if you stink, how much in the hole are we in? That's what matters. I know free agents, in theory, are less risky than draft picks. Not even in theory. They are less risky than draft picks because you've at least seen them produce on an NFL field. You don't necessarily know how they're going to fit in your locker room and your scheme and yada, yada, yada. You still got to let it play out. But typically the reason you're overpaying for free agents is because you're paying for past production in some ways, because you're paying for the knowledge that you know this guy has already been able to produce on an NFL field. That said, there's still a chance that guy stinks. There's still a chance he's a bum, and he's a way more expensive bum than a draft pick. So the guarantees are what matters. I need to know how much in the hole I am in. If Christian Kirk had been a bad player for the Jaguars, which he's not, obviously, that'd be tough because they still owe him a lot of money in guarantees. But I'm fine with it because he's good.
Right.
Gabe Davis, same thing. The guarantees, though, the way Gabe Davis's contract is structured, it's basically guaranteed. A lot of it is. But that said, say this year is not great. Okay, you restructure it, you figure it out. Hopefully you can reduce the cap hit to not being too crazy in a couple years. But you're going to let it play. He's going to be here for at least 2 years anyways. And I don't think it's too bad. Calvin Ridley at, what is it, $23 million a year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm out on that. Now, they should have gotten Josh Allen paid already so they could have tagged Ridley. We all know this. But the way things worked out, I would have done what Balky did yesterday. I would have said, I'm not matching that.
No, I wouldn't have.
You can't. $23 million a year?
You need, for that to be justified,
for like a B+ receiver.
You would need like 10 touchdowns, over 100 catches, and you would need like 1,400 yards.
You need him to be
season.
You need him to be your Devontae Adams, your Jamar Chase for that kind of money. And those guys are getting paid more than that, but I think they're getting paid more than that. I'd have to look kind of through the receiver list, but they're paying him to be that guy. Now, what's kind of interesting in this that I kind of forgot about is the Titans have DeAndre Hopkins.
They do. I've heard rumor they might trade him. Really? I don't know why, but I don't know if there's any truth to that. But I mean, with the Titans, I remember
they've got kind of an interesting receiving
different GM. They get rid of AJ Brown a couple of years ago, so they rely on their draft. Traylon Burks, he's not any good. So
he can't stay on the field.
They trade for DeAndre Hopkins. They trade for DeAndre Hopkins, and now they just got Calvin Ridley with an offensive-minded head coach. Which, by the way, we have no idea how he is. He didn't even call plays at the previous spot he was at. So they're trying to be more offensively efficient and trying to go away from the run game that they have been for the last decade and try to be more pass happy.
They got kind of an interesting receiving core going on. Because you'd think their top three are Hopkins, Ridley, and Burks. Really, none of those guys play in the slot. Those are kind of all outside guys. So
Burks does a little,
I guess. Burks is pretty big though, isn't he? Isn't he more of a big body type of guy?
Let me look it up.
I don't know. It's just Ridley's played like almost 90% of his career outside, and I know DeAndre Hopkins has too. So I mean, they can play it. It's not like you can't do it, but
yeah, Burks is 6'2", 225, way bigger than I thought.
Yeah, is 6'2", 225 your slot guy?
Yeah, that's not ideal.
You want your slot guy to be shifty,
like 5'10".
Yeah. You
5'11".
You want jerk routes and little out routes, and a linebacker can't stick on him type of guy. Christian Kirk.
Exactly. All right.
I still think Christian Kirk might be the best. He's not the best receiver in the. Is he the best receiver in the division? No.
It's not Pittman. It's not D-Hop.
It might
He's
be
up
Ridley.
there.
It might be Ridley. It's the Houston guys coming to play.
Nico Collins and Tank Dell.
Yeah. There's not like a clear.
There's not a standout.
There's kind of a debate for 4 to 5 guys probably.
All right, let's transition to Gator basketball before we get out of here. So Georgia, Georgia going on a 12-0 run against Missouri last night to move on to play Florida. Florida's already beaten Georgia. They've beaten Mike White every time since Mike White left Florida to go to Georgia. Florida wins tonight, by the way. I think tip is like 9:30. If you're lucky, 9:45 if the previous game doesn't run late. So primetime tip against Georgia, and then the winner of this game will move on to play Alabama. I don't think Florida really struggles at all. I think they take care of business. Georgia, Missouri wasn't a good SEC team and still barely escaped. I think Florida take care of business, and then they'll win by 12-15, and then they'll play Alabama and move on.
Winning or losing to Alabama is going to be the real mark on if the SEC tournament's a success for Florida. If they beat Bama in the second round, then it's a really good tournament for them. If they lose, kind of a wash. If they lose tonight, it's a disaster. If they lose tonight, dude, they'll probably fall to an 8 or 9 seed, I would imagine. Right now, they were, in my opinion, sitting pretty comfortably to be like a 6, and they had that god-awful loss to Vandy. And they kind of need to make a little bit of noise to make up for that and kind of get people to forget about that game. I tend to think Frank Frangie on the Frangie Show, their show's going on right now. I heard him on the way back in to the station to the podcast. I heard him saying that the fact that Florida played so poorly against Vanderbilt is probably a good thing for tonight, and I tend to agree with that. I think they're going to respond well. They're better than Georgia. They're just a better basketball team. They should be very motivated. Mike White got an extension. Did you see that?
Yes.
2-year extension. Deserved.
Not Mike White. Todd Golden.
Tough. I got Mike White on the brain because we're talking about Georgia. I apologize.
Through what, 27, 28, I think it is.
Yeah,
2-year extension.
It's because we're talking about Georgia that I got Mike White on the brain. Because I was about to echo your point about the fact that Mike White hasn't beaten Florida since he left Florida to take the Georgia job. Well deserved by Todd Golden though. In my opinion, they've had a really good year. Again, the Vandy game was tough, but with how many games they play in basketball, you're going to have some games that you don't like.
The deal goes through 29-30.
Isn't it crazy that that's not like 10 years away?
Yeah, it is.
That's still.
I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that's 10 years from now. Like, no, wait, that's like 6, less than 6.
Yeah, it's still a ways away, but like, just feels like that's 15 years away.
Yeah, and I mean, you always hear adults say like, as you get older, time flies. I mean, like 4 years ago to this day, we were in Gainesville. And we had just heard that the NBA shut down due to COVID.
Yeah.
And then all the sports were shutting down. I literally remember every single moment like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Like everything. I remember I was umpiring intramural softball, and then I go play basketball in the gym, and I check my Twitter, and it says not Adam Schefter, the NBA commissioner.
Adam Silver
said that he shut down the league.
Yep.
And that was like jaw-dropping.
The players was going on.
Yep.
They had shut down the players. Man, what a crazy time. Florida had a good team that year too, a good basketball
Florida
team.
State had
a really good basketball team. Florida State arguably could have won it all that year. They were really.
They probably were going to if you had to put money on a team.
I'm not giving Florida State fans that satisfaction.
Yeah, well, I would because we'll never know.
They were really damn good though. They had a chance for sure. I mean, that was a Final Four team. 100%. That Florida State team, they were really, really good. And they haven't been very good at all since. Well-deserved extension by Todd Golden. I agree that I think they're going to win convincingly tonight, and then the Bama game is going to really be the game for them.
You think they beat Bama? I think they do.
I think they do too, man. They match up really well against them, and they seem to get up and play really well against them too. I think that let's assume they win the night, and then let's assume they beat Bama. That, I think, makes all forgiven with the Vanderbilt loss. I think that avenges that. Because then you've gone to would that put them in the semifinals or the final of the SEC tournament? I think the semifinals.
If they beat Bama, they'll be in the semifinal. They'll play Kentucky. If Kentucky wins their side.
That sounds right. In a loaded SEC, getting to the semifinals at worst that's another good check mark on the resume. And again, I think it kind of absolves a little bit of that Vandy game and probably puts you back in the 6-7 range instead of the 8-9 range, which they need to be in to really have a favorable spot to get to the second weekend. I think this team's plenty good enough to get to the second weekend, in my opinion.
Yep. So we'll see. Before we go, any advice from you going to the TPC tomorrow? Has it been pretty crazy out there today, yesterday? How many days have you been out there? Every day?
Today, no, I didn't go yet. I didn't go yesterday. Yesterday was Wednesday. We're taping this pod on Thursday. I went Tuesday, which is the first day of practice rounds. Practice rounds Tuesday, Wednesday. I went Tuesday, didn't go Wednesday. I went today, Thursday. I was out there all day today. I'm going tomorrow, Friday, and then I'm going Sunday, the final round. Basically the way it works is Tuesday and Wednesday, there's almost no traffic at all. It's really not bad or that crowded because it's practice rounds. Thursday, today, it ramps up pretty big in terms of amount of people that are out there. Friday really starts to ramp up because a lot more people can take off work or they just go in the afternoon at the end of work, play a little hooky, whatever.
That's what I'm doing.
And then by the weekend, it's basically going to a Jags game in terms of traffic and all that. Probably even more so. Advice. Tacos on 12. Great spot.
Taco Lou?
Yeah.
Okay.
Taco Lou, great spot. Taste of Jack's. 12T, 13 green. Great spot. I think that's right. Do I have it mixed up? No, 12 teeth, 13 green.
That sounds right.
Yeah, Taste of Jack's. They got ABBQ out there. They got this lobster place. It's really good.
Is that Cousin Maine?
Yeah, Cousin Maine. It's really, really good. They got these like lobster sandwiches that are delicious. So enjoy the food is the main thing I'm getting at. Food's delicious basically everywhere you go. The burnt ends from ABBQ. Shoo.
Burnt ends are pretty fire.
Dude.
With some sweet sauce.
Dude, that's exactly what I got earlier. In terms of other tips, don't go A1A.
Go 210.
Yeah, go 210.
9B. Okay.
210 ain't nearly as bad because there's way less people coming
from that way.
So traffic-wise, that's what I would recommend. Are you going to have a media credential?
Yeah, I got the show from 10 to noon, and then I'm going to slide down there for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's perfect. So you take 210 because I know this is great podcasting for people that don't have credentials. But the place Media Parks is like kind of on that side, so you can sneak right in.
So funny story. When we went last year when we had that lunch on that Thursday.
Yeah.
I took 9B to 210, and where 9B goes to 210 at that stoplight, cars are going, and this work truck is in front of me, and he's not going. The light's green. I go around Buddy. Buddy is asleep at the wheel.
Like legit asleep.
Foot is on the brake.
Like conked.
And he's knocked over. I don't know if it was his buddy or it was a random person. He pulls over and knocks on his window, and Buddy, he jumped like a cat got sprayed on by water, man. He's like, oh my God. I was like, man, I feel so bad for that guy. You never know, man, with people. He probably working 2 jobs and didn't get any sleep, and it was funny for 0.2 seconds. And then we made our way over there to the TPC. I'm excited to see it. I mean, not a lot of stars in it, because of obviously the live stuff. I'm a casual golfer. I'll turn it on Sundays and see what's going on. I'm not watching Thursday, Friday usually. This is always a big event. I mean, I'll never forget, I was in 8th grade. Yes, I was in 8th grade. So this was 2011, 2012, and Tiger was golfing. And he does that from time to time. he was golfing, and I forget what hole it was. And it's a par 4. And I'm where his second shot would be. Dude, he hits a drive not even 10 yards from me.
That's cool.
I'm not joking, Graham. You watched the entire gallery. It was like a tsunami of people just followed Tiger right with him. And you could hear like the conversations with him and his caddy. He's talking. He's like, I see 12 o'clock. I see 1 o'clock. I guess like how they want to hit the ball, where they want to read it. It was just cool. You know, I didn't golf then. I golf now. I mean, how effortless they make golf look.
Dude, it's insane.
It's stupid.
Well, it's this. I am guilty of this, or I was guilty of this when I was younger. I know better now. But I think a lot of people are probably guilty of this. If you haven't played golf yourself, if you've never tried to go out to a range or even play 9 or 18 holes and actually try to hit a ball, hit it straight, hit it where you're trying to go, and you haven't actually done that process, golf looks very easy. You have to play and struggle like everyone does to understand that it's not.
Well, and it's like baseball. You have to play from when you're a kid. Like, there's no golfer that's like, yeah, I picked this up when I was 18 and now I'm on the tour. That doesn't happen. Baseball is like you play when you're 5'6", and you play all the way up because it's all about hand-eye coordination and impact on the ball and all things like that. Football, I mean, Leon seriously started playing football at senior year of high school, and he's an all-pro Hall of Famer.
Football is more about, in terms of playing at the highest level, it's more about, do you have the athletic gifts or do you not? Because you can play your whole life, but if you don't have the athletic gifts, forget it. If you're playing, if you're a receiver, if you weren't just gifted with 4.4 speed, you're not playing in the league. Unless you're 6'6" and crazy big, and you at least got 4.6 speed.
Very few outliers.
Right. There's just very few human beings on the planet that are physically gifted enough to play in the NFL, or the NBA is similar. And then stuff like golf is just, I mean, again, like, if you have not swung a golf club yourself and tried to do it and understood how hard it is, it looks so easy. When you watch these professionals and you watch them hit it, if you don't know any better, you'll watch it and think, oh, I can do that, no problem. And then you go out there and you're like, oh my God, dude, this is insane. Got to watch Scotty Scheffler tee off today. Got
Travis
to watch
Radloff,
him.
you mean?
Yeah, Travis Radloff. Did you see my story? My Instagram story?
No, you check it out.
There's a buddy of ours named Travis who looks just like Scotty Scheffler. But anyway, got to watch him tee off holes 1 and 2, so that was cool. It's a cool event, man. And you know what's crazy with the whole live thing? You probably saw this a little bit last year. Dude, all the live guys that have done anything, that have like won the Players or whatever, they have scrubbed them clean of anything out there.
Oh yeah, they did it last year. Like they were playing like the previous winners, like the calls on the 18. They didn't call Cam Smith.
No,
because
dude. It's like the Cam Smith year never happened.
Yeah.
The way that they cut, and now that Scheffler won last year, Scheffler's the crown jewel of the tour right now. Dude, they got his stuff from last year all over the place. They're playing his calls, winning the game, or winning the tournament, and we're too much football. They're playing the calls of him winning the tournament, and they got this big mural of him on the side of the fan. They got a couple of them, but conveniently all the live guys are not on there that have won in the past. But yeah, man, it's in my opinion, besides Florida, Georgia, it's the biggest event that this area has, and it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, hopefully we get a new stadium and we can attract a Final Four, college football playoff, maybe another Super Bowl.
Speaking of Tiger, I wanted to have a quick. We won't make this a long-winded thing. We could, but we don't need to. A quick discussion about this because Tiger kind of reminded me of it. They've talked about the morning guys have talked about this a couple times. Tiger is a guy that, and there's these athletes come along every so often, once in a generation, if not less. Athletes that are above their sport, right? Tiger is bigger than golf, right? People that know absolutely nothing about golf.
My sister knows Tiger.
Right. People that know nothing about golf, do not watch a single swing all of golf season, know exactly who Tiger Woods is. They can pick him out of a lineup, right? Right now, there is a figure like that in women's basketball in Caitlin Clark. She's nasty. She is disgusting. So there's been this debate this year of, is the women's game better than the men's game? To me, that's preposterous. It's not. It's not better than the men's game. In terms of like intrigue and watch, it's just not. I mean, if the women's tournament has better ratings than the men's, I'll stand corrected and I'll admit I'm wrong. To me, it's more of a Caitlin Clark conversation than a men's versus women's conversation.
Yeah,
if Caitlin Clark was not in women's basketball, this would not be true.
Yeah, and people can't name you 4 players in women's basketball in college other than Caitlin Clark. I was listening to a conversation with Michael Mulvihill. He runs like one of the big guys at Fox that picks like the games and stuff. And he was having a conversation with Cowherd. He expects like the tournament for the women's side to be almost on par with the men's.
In terms of viewership?
Yes, in terms of viewership because of Caitlin Clark. But I mean, it's solely because of her. It's not because of, all of the other teams. But I mean, but the women's has been very entertaining in years past with the South Carolina and UConn. Notre Dame has been entertaining every now and then.
It has, and LSU right now is entertaining.
Yep.
I just think that it might be true, and I might be wrong, that this year the women's tournament is going to be more intriguing and is going to have possibly better ratings. However, where people lose me is if they're carrying that conversation into like saying that this is the norm now. I tend to think once Caitlin Clark leaves and goes to WNBA, it won't be that way again. Unless another Caitlin Clark comes along. And I think Caitlin Clark's a once in a generation, again, if not less, type of player.
Yeah, I agree. The numbers will be similar, but I mean,
this year it might be true. I mean,
I still don't think. I think the men's Final Four, the men's title game, is still going to get a pretty big number, even if Caitlin Clark is still in the women's game. It's going to be close, but I still think the men do better.
And I think casuals that don't watch college basketball other than March Madness will still, unless they happen to know Caitlin Clark, they will still tune into the men's game as a default. Because that's just what they've always done.
Yeah, it's what it's appointment viewing. It always is.
Now I will say, like in the men's game, Zach Edey is going to win the Wooden Award. He plays for Purdue. So I don't think he's the best player in college basketball, but by award standards and stature and status within the game, he's going to win it, and he's the barometer right now. Way more people know who Caitlin Clark is than Zach Edey. Way more.
Yeah, way more people know Caitlin Clark more than any player in college basketball for the men's side, other than LeBron's son. Just because of the way that ESPN has marketed her,
and even that's probably close.
Yeah,
Caitlin Clark versus LeBron's son. That's. I would probably say more people know Caitlin Clark.
Yeah,
there's probably a pretty big subsection of people that don't know that LeBron has a son that plays for USC.
Yeah, because I don't even know what he's done this year.
He hasn't done much.
Like a basket or two a game.
Well, did you see recently, like that whole stuff about ESPN took him out of the? So, I think it was maybe last year, the year before he went to USC. ESPN was doing mock drafts, and they had Bronny at like they had him at like the 4th overall prospect or something, and every person that like follows that type of stuff and really understands NBA scouting and how that stuff works, they were like, what the hell is this? He's not even close to this. He's not really even a prospect that's being considered next year, much less the 4th overall. Or it was 4th or 5th or something like that. But the thinking was from ESPN, you put LeBron's son in there because LeBron's son gets clicks. But now that it's actually much closer to the NBA draft and it's more nut-cutting time in terms of actually relevant. Right. He's not even in their top prospects. Like guys, he's not even in it. And more than likely, he's going to return to USC next year and continue to develop his game. So there was a whole controversy because LeBron quote tweeted this whole thing about him not being a prospect, and he was like,
I've seen some of that.
And he basically quoted the tweet and said, just let the kid be a kid and play college basketball, enjoy college basketball.
He hasn't treated him like that in his entire existence.
When a year ago, he said, I'm watching these games on League Pass, and Bronny's better than these guys. Like, dude, you can't have both of those things. I love LeBron, but come on, dude. Yeah. Talk about changing your tune. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
If anyone put these expectations on him, it's you.
Yeah, because you're the one that's been propping him up and saying all this, you know.
Anyway, I just think it's a very intriguing topic for this year. I could very well be wrong that the women's tournament this particular year might carry more intrigue and it might show up in the ratings, but I don't think this is a sign of things to come. Even though the women's side does have more continuity because people stay with teams longer, which is a good thing. That's a feather in the cap of the women's side of things. It won't continue to be more popular than the men's once Caitlin Clark leaves.
I still think it'll be close going forward, just because this is what the women have shown in the ratings the last couple of years. So
I think that the day Caitlin Clark leaves,
you think it's going to drop like a rock?
Yeah,
I don't think it drops like it'll drop, but it's not going to be like 20-30%. It'll be like
it'll drop enough to where it once again between men's and women's in terms of viewership won't be a competition.
Oh, we'll see.
In my opinion.
That's why I don't know how many people care about that, but I like looking at ratings because ratings will show you what people care about. You know, people
100%.
People always say we like this, we like that. You know, they always say we all like Cinderella, and then Cinderella makes it to the Elite Eight, and then you don't watch it, and you watch the Blue Bloods. When everybody says I don't like Kentucky and Kansas, well, you watch it, so obviously you care.
The biggest knock on the men's game right now is there's not enough continuity. There's not the Joakim Noahs of the world, the Tyler Hansbroughs of the world, those types of guys that even the I know everybody hates him, the Grayson Allens of the world here from Jacksonville, from Providence. Those guys that stay on a campus for multiple years and you love if he's a part of your university and you hate if he's on somebody else's team. There's not enough continuity for those guys to really exist. Zach Edey is really the only face of college basketball right now that's been in a program for any amount of time. And then the other part of this is the fact that if you look at the top NBA prospects, you're looking at half or less be guys in college basketball. They're all foreigners or G League guys.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that next week for a topic. College basketball's got too watered down, and the sport's not as good.
Well, look at Florida. Every guy that
transfer guys.
Every guy that contributes is either a true freshman or a transfer.
Well, and again,
except Riley Kugel, who, if he contributes, that kind of goes in and out.
Next week, I wanted to hit on the sports being too watered down, and like anybody can beat anybody. Like last year, a 1 seed went down to a 16. I don't even know who it was.
It was Purdue lost to Fairleigh Dickinson.
Okay. So I remember now that you say that. And it wouldn't surprise me if it happened again this year because there's too much talent spread everywhere and there's no depth on any team. But I want to get into that next week for a teaser. Oh, we'll get that midweek. I don't know, Monday, Thursday, whenever, because the tournament starts Thursday.
I don't know.
Well, before that, really.
Dude, I'm so excited.
It's crazy.
Dude, I love March Madness.
The month of March is the best.
The last take I'm going to put out on this week's pod, March Madness is the best postseason in all of sports.
It's the best event.
It's the best postseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's nonstop entertainment from noon to midnight, 4 consecutive days.
It's not more intriguing than like the NFL playoffs because the NFL is a better product. But in terms of the jump from regular season to postseason interest by the casual fan, it's the best postseason in sports.
Yeah, there's nothing like when you're watching a game and you see games going down to the wire at the top of the screen. You pop right over to CBS or True or TNT, whatever.
Because people love like the NFL playoffs, but people just love the NFL.
Yeah.
So
and gambling and all that. So all right, that'll do it for March 14th. Ridley's gone. Arik Armstead's a Jag, and that'll do it for this Thursday. Denmark and Marsh. I'm Dylan Denmark. That's Graham Marsh. You can get us on Twitter at 1010XL Denmark and at 1010XL Graham. Until then, enjoy your time at the TPC and enjoy your time this weekend. We'll see you next week.